Hello, welcome to our next session in PreAlgebra. We're going to continue today with section 7.7, talking about interest. Before we do that, let's do a quick review here. 5%, if we were to rewrite that into a decimal, remember we move our decimal over, and we would have 0.05. If we have 6.5% and we want to convert that into a decimal, we'd have to move that over 2 places, and you would have 0.065. What fraction of a year is each of the following? 9 months. Well, of course, we know there are 12 months out of a year, right? So if we want to find out 9 months and what fraction is that of a year, that would be 9 over 12. And you can reduce that, and you would get 3/4. If we have 8 months out of the year, we want to find what fraction of a year that is. 8 over 12, and we reduce that, that would give us 2/3. Let's take a look here now and look at simplifying 3,000 times 0.045 times 2/3. When you multiply all of that out, your zeros actually will eliminate some of those decimals. You can also cross cancel the 3 and the 3,000 here. That would give us 1,000. When you simplify all that, your answer should be 90. Number 6 here. If you simplify first, you have to simplify the parentheses first. 1 plus 0.1, and that would give us 1.1, right? Then we would have to take 1.1 and square it. Then you take that answer and multiply by 4, and your final answer for that should be 4.84. Why are these examples that we just did important, you might ask? Well, those actually are examples of some very important steps that are part of our interest topic here today. Interest is the amount of money that is paid for the use of money. If you invest money, you earn interest on your investment. But if you borrow money, you must pay interest on your loan. There are 2 common types of interest, simple and compound. Simple interest means that at the end of a specified period of time, the borrower pays the lender the full amount borrowed plus the interest due as a single payment. So let's say that I had to borrow money from one of you to pay off let's say that I have a very big school debt. College is very expensive, and I had to borrow money from somebody to pay that off, okay, or even from the bank, okay? And let's say I had to borrow $10,000 to pay off my school bill. The bank charges interest, and so by the end of the period, I would have to pay back the $10,000 plus the amount of interest that the bank charges. It's like a fee that the bank has to charge for borrowing that amount of money. In some situations, you may be the borrower. In others, you may be the lender. Although it is necessary to borrow in order to produce wealth, it is better to be the lender. Proverbs 22:7 tells us that the borrower is servant to the lender. So if you must borrow money, remember that you are a servant under obligation to the one that you borrowed from. That means that you really have to make sure you pay off your debts. If you borrow money, you're going to become a servant to that lender, the bank, or the person who loans you the money, or the company who loans you the money, and your top priority really needs to be paying that money back. It is necessary very important to understand how simple interest works before studying other types of interest calculations. In our simple interest formula right here, I is the interest. P equals the principal. That means the amount of money that you're borrowing. The rate, annual rate of interest, that means the percent of the rate of interest that is going to be charged. And then the time in years. People who buy a house, they could take 30 to 40 years to pay off the house. And then their time in years would be calculated into the formula I equals PRT. Now, for our first example, let's take a look at this here. Find the simple interest earned from a one-time investment of $3,000 at 8% interest if the account is closed at the end of 2 years. So first, we need to know what is our interest formula. Interest, remember, is I equals PRT. If you can remember that formula, that will help you for this lesson and probably the next couple of lessons. I equals PRT. Interest equals principal times the rate times the time. Now, the principal here is $3,000. Okay? The interest is at 8%, the rate. 8%, 0.08. And then the time it took, or that the person wanted to borrow this money for, was 2 years. So he plugged in 2 for 2 years. Then you can do the calculations and you end up with $480. That is the amount of interest that is charged over 2 years on $3,000. So if you borrow $3,000, that's great. You have to pay that back. Plus, you also have to pay an additional $480 as part of the interest rate over 2 years. Now, let's say Aaron borrowed $465 for 1 year to buy an 18-speed touring bicycle. His bank gave him a simple interest loan at 12% annual interest rate for 1 year. Annual means once a year. This amount is charged once a year. How much interest will Aaron pay? So, again, what is our formula for interest? I equals PRT. Interest equals principal times rate times the time. So, our principal, he borrowed $465. The rate was 12%, and so at a decimal, it's going to be 0.12. And the time, he borrowed it for 1 year. Okay, so when you do those calculations, you end up with 55.80. This is very important to keep because we're talking about dollars amount, right? So Aaron owes $55.80 in simple interest. Now, if we were to add and say what was Aaron's total rate or total amount that he must pay, that means the amount that he borrowed, $465 plus $55.80. That is going to be the total amount of money that he has to pay at the end of the year from the loan and the interest. Now, the amount formula. Here's another formula for you to memorize here. Amount equals the principal plus the interest. This is the amount that is due. Okay, the principal is the amount that you borrow, and then the interest, the rate we talked about, the amount, we can easily calculate that that is the principal plus the interest. So let's take, for example, here, find the interest and the total value of an investment of $1,500 at 5% simple interest for 9 months. So it says find the interest. Okay, so which formula are we going to use? Yes, our interest formula. Okay, now first we take a look. The time is 9 months, right? Now we have to write that in a fraction of a year. So 9 months out of 12 months is going to give us 3/4 of a year. Okay, our time must be expressed in terms of a year or a fraction of a year. That's going to be, and then we can convert that into a decimal because that'll be easier to work it that way, 0.75. Okay? And then our interest formula, because it says find the interest. The interest is equal to principal times the rate times the time. Our principal is $1,500. And the rate is 5%, right? And then we times the time. So we plug those numbers into our formula here, do the calculations, and you end up with $56.25. That is the amount of interest. Then the amount is your principal, okay, $1,500 plus the interest, this $56.25 right here. That is going to be the total amount that is due, or the total amount received from this investment, because this is an investment. That means you're going to be getting this amount of money back. The total of investment is $1,556.25. A savings account offers 4%